not, I'll explain to you, more about financial leverage. Can you recall anything that we discussed yesterday about financial leverage?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We studied about debt equity ratio and its relation with leverage. That if we take debt, then it is used to leverage the equity.
Okay.
It may go up and it may go down as well.
Right.
Sir, if the earning of the company is more than the leverage is high, and if the earning of the company is get less, or the company does not have any profit, then leverage will be 0 or negative.
So what should company do? This being the case, what if you are manager of a company, what will you do?
Sir, we rely less on debt.
You will rely less on debt. Okay, means you will prefer as less debt equity ratio as possible.
No, sir, we need more that, because at that time the company is not able to provide return to the equity shareholder, so they want to exit from the company, so the equity capital get reduced in the company, so the company need more debt to continue its function.
Okay, all right. Now study the table once again, the slide once again. I have worked out EPS at various debt equity ratio. What is the first debt equity ratio? Equity is
1:4.
1:4. Next is
3:7.
3:7, then 2:3, 1:1. All right, like this it goes. What effects of this debt equity ratio you see on earning per share?
Sir, the more the debt equity ratio, the more the earning per share.
Okay, higher is the debt equity ratio, higher is earning per share. Right? Any other observation? Apart from this, is there any other observation? Higher debt equity ratio, higher will be earning per share, right? Any other observation? Yes, please.
They may not have any earnings at all.
Okay.
If there is lower ratio.
If the company does not have any earning at all, what will happen? Company will suffer more, because in any case it has to pay back to the debenture holders, whether it earns or it does not earn. Will have to pay the committed amount to the debenture holders. It will have to pay committed amount to the bank in the form of interest on the loan it has taken. Contrary to this, if it is 100% based on equity only, then there is no firm commitment. If there is a profit, they get. If there is no profit, they don't get. Okay. Do you observe any other thing in the slide?
So amount of asset remain the same for the whole time.
Okay, right. Amount of asset remain the same, but EPS is changing only because of debt equity ratio. So do you think practically it is possible that merely changing debt equity ratio, a company can earn huge EPS for its investors? Is it possible or not?
Practically, I think it is not possible.
Practically, it is not possible. Theoretically, it is possible. Secondly, what I wanted you to observe was that the rate at which DPS is increasing or EPS is increasing is much more than the rate at which debt equity ratio is increasing. I'll repeat. Debt equity ratio or percentage of debt is increasing at a particular rate. Let us say 10%, 20%, 30%. But EPS is increasing at a much faster rate. Look at the percent increase which I have mentioned here. Look at serial number 12. Percent increase in debt: 50%, 33%, 25%, 20%. And what is happening at percent increase in EPS? By much more amount. That is also one of the trend. If you look at this observation, at 10% debt, EPS is 1.125. At 50% debt, EPS is 1.5. At 90% debt, EPS is 5.5. From 1.125 to 1.50. Marginal increase. But see the quantum of jump in EPS. Why is it happening? Because that is why we call it as a leverage. Company is doing nothing except changing debt equity ratio. More of it you will learn when we, in this case, our assets were constant and rate on assets was changing. If we take another example wherein a rate of return does not change, but we change other parameters, you will see the dangers or the risks which are involved in the company. I have tried to explain to you in a simple language in the next slide. If a firm continues to increase debt, what will happen? Demand of debt will increase. A simple economics formula: when demand of any product increases, its price also increase. In our example, what is the product or service? It is a debt. When its demand increases, naturally its price will also increase. What is the price of debt? It is interest. Okay. It increases cost of debt. Higher the demand, higher are the prices because of supply is constant. It also increases KE. Why should it also increase KE? You are now listen to me carefully. You are shareholder. You are equity shareholder in the company. And suppose the debt in your company increases, KE should increase or not? Is the question clear?
So can you please explain again the question?
Sure. You are equity shareholder in a company, and at a particular point in time, you observe that the debt in the company is regularly increasing. Debt component is regularly increasing. As a equity shareholder, will your expectations increase in this company, or your expectations will remain the same, or your expectations will decrease?
Sir, decrease.
Say it again loudly.
Sir, decrease. Sir, decrease.
Decrease. Okay. Why decrease?
As the company is taking more debt, then
Okay.
Then the company would have to pay the interest on it, and
Okay.
at later time the company would have to refund the amount as well.
Okay.
So the company would have to take that money from the
To the
profit.
equity shareholders. What is your basis of taking decision? What you are saying is something related to sympathizing with the company. Have you made investment in a charitable organization or in a commercial organization?
Sir, commercial.
What is your purpose of investment?
Sir,
Being-
profit, dividend.
Profit and dividend. Why should you sympathize with the company if company has to pay more interest and you think that because company is paying more, therefore it will pay less? Is it a rational decision?
No, sir.
Then what should you expect?
Sir, if the
It will increase.
I will expect more from the company if the
Because-
debt value is increasing.
No, what is
Because
the logic? You
if
will
the
expect-
profit point is if the profit percentage is above the leverage point, so ultimately the equity holders will earn more profit.
Okay. I'll tell you.
Sir,
I'm trying to
in,
go.
sir, in the,
Hmm.
can I explain?
Sure.
Sir, in reality, if the debt of the company is increased, so the more amount of fund is coming to the company. So by this amount, company can purchase and do more investment and buy more assets. Therefore, the production in future will be increased. So there will be more profit to the producer in future.
Okay.
Because that amount remains the same, they give the same amount, 10% debt to them, and the remaining, the above amount of it is distributed among the holder as profit.
Okay. I'll tell you the most important reason for expecting more from the company. For expecting more from the company. When you invest, you expect a return. Your expectations are also governed by the amount of risk you are taking. By buying equity share, are you taking some risk or not?
Yes, certainly.
You are taking risk. If the company itself is more risky, your expectation should be more, logically, rationally. If you expect more return, you should be prepared to take more risk. So by investing in equity shares, you have taken a risk. You may get more return, you may get less return, you may get no return at all. Means your investment is risky. Depending on the value of volume of risk, your expectation changes. Otherwise, you would have deposited in a bank, whether bank makes profit or does not make a profit, you are not worried about it. But you have invested in equity, therefore you have taken a risk. And when the company takes more and more debt, it is becoming more and more risky. When the company in which you have invested is more risky, your expectation should also increase. It should pay you more. You must have certainly heard the concept called venture capitalist. Have you heard this term or not?
Yes, sir.
These are the people who invest in not in conventional projects. They invest in something which is unique. The project may take off and may not. If it does, if it takes off, there'll be huge return. If it does not, there'll be huge losses. Venture capital. So means the people who invest, they expect more. Similarly, there are several investment projects. Some of them are very risky, some of them are less risky, some of them are not risky. So depending on the volume of risk, expectations of shareholder changes. Higher the risk, higher the return. No risk, no return. Less risk, less return. Therefore, your expectation will increase. Now come to the slide once again. It also increases KE. I have explained to you the reason. Because more debt in capital structure makes a firm more riskier. And when more risk, one expects more return also. Now what happens as a sequel to this, as a continuation to this, what happens? When the KE increases, KD also increases, then the firm will no longer be able to meet the expectations of both the category. And both will start to sell. When both sell, the share price will decrease. When share price decrease, there are no buyers, there will be wealth erosion. And company will again try to readjust its capital structure. That is why you will see that a lot of companies continue to restructure their capital, changing from debt to equity or equity to debt and so on and so forth. So this is what a common understanding of the phenomenon is. A simple economic rule: when you have more debt, more risk, more expectations. Similarly, when debt is more in demand, its price will also increase. When it increases, KE also, company is not able to earn more because it is paying more and more interest. Equity shareholders will quit. So this is what you should have, what I was expecting you to follow, and you should understand the implications of financial leverage. If this part is clear, I'll proceed on to the next one. Read the slide which is available on your screen once again and tell me if there is anything on this slide which is not making any sense to you. Read one by one. If a firm continues to increase debt, demand of debt will increase. Do you agree with this?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It increases cost of debt. Higher the demand, higher are the prices. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
Sir, please explain point number 4.
Okay, let me reach point 4. I have explained 2. Now point number 3. It also increases KE because more debt in capital structure makes a firm riskier. And when there is more risk, one expects more return also. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
Now
Sir,
we come
is
to
it a
any
thumb,
doubt here?
sir, is it a thumb rule that if there is more risk, then more returns will also follow?
Okay. Let me ask you. That is why application of the concept is extremely important. Let me ask you a question. You have 1,000 rupees that you wish to invest. Bank promises 5% return. And if you invest in a company, you may get 11%, 15%, maybe even 4%. What you will do? Bank or a company? What is your answer? Bank or a company?
Sir, company.
Company. Why company? Because you expect more return. Bank is giving you only 5 and you expect 11%. But at the same time, there is a risk also. Company may pay you even 0. You were better off had you deposited in the bank. So you have taken a risk. That is why you are expecting 11%. So nothing like thumb rule. Naturally, if you expect more, you will have to assume more risk also. If you do not want any risk, you should be prepared for a lesser return. So this is the rule. This is the situation. This is the behavior of a person. You apply everything to yourself, what you will do. Okay? When you come up with any other proposition, discuss with me. Now next, when KD increases, KE also increases. Why? Because if lot of loan has been taken, there will be lot of interest outgo. So shareholders' expectations will also increase. Okay. Then what will happen? Maximum shareholders will quit. They will exit. They will sell. As a sequence to this, as a next step to this, when there are several sellers, lesser buyers, what will happen?
Price will go down. Price will go down.
Share price will go down. You are right. When share prices go down, companies' market capitalization also decreases. Shareholders' wealth is maximized or eroded.
Eroded.
Eroded means you have not achieved the objective of financial management. That is why this situation theoretically is good, but practically is not possible. Second reason, which is rather more important than this entire explanation, that
Sir, there is exception to this also.
there may be exception. That's what I was just about to explain to you. Whenever you see any offer which sounds away from the realities of life, you may be rest assured that the offer has got some hanky-panky in it, something fishy about the offer. If somebody tells you, you give your money today, in 1 year I'll double your money, will you straight away believe or not? Will you believe him or not?
It depends upon the person.
Okay.
Does I believe? Yes.
Right. I'm asking you. You will believe or not?
No, sir.
Okay. If a person says, give me your money today, I will not double your money, but I'll give you 30% return. Will you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you say, yes, sir, tell me where in the world in which business 30% return is available?
So we can invest in share market, so we can easily get 30%. We have to make up portfolios of different stocks. We do not have to.
Okay. All said and done, tell me any investment manager, any company, any portfolio which in a year has appreciated, forget about COVID, forget about demonetization, forget about monetization, general circumstances, normal circumstances, any portfolio which has increased by 30%. What is the average return, or what has been the average return in the equity market?
So minimum 10%.
Average.
Minimum
I am asking. Average.
So I don't know average.
Average is about 17%. If somebody tells you 18%, it can be accepted. If somebody tells you 200%, the point here I am trying to make, any formula, anything, any recommendation, anything that comes out to be drastically away from the expected scenario, we will have to think twice. People are swayed. They are taken for a ride by making such attractive offers. Our job as a student of financial management is to analyze those offers, test them based on various models, and then only recommend or take a decision ourselves. So this was about the meaning and explanation and illustration of financial leverage. There is one more concept of financial leverage known as a degree of financial leverage. Degree of financial leverage. A few minutes before I told you that the rate of EPS is more than the rate of debt equity ratio. Same thing I have explained to you in details a bit. What is the degree of financial leverage? It measures the rate at which earning per share, it is wrongly written, it is not ESP, it is EPS. Earning per share increases when debt equity ratio changes. Or what percentage in DE will cause what percentage change in EPS can be termed as a degree of financial leverage. Mathematically, it can be calculated. I have just told you, calculate the percent change in DE, percent change in EPS. For example, look at the data in slide 2, row 3, column 5. This you can read at a later stage. Right now, the purpose is to explain to you the meaning of degree of financial leverage. It measures the rate of change in EPS with what rate of change in debt equity ratio. And it can work in the negative direction also. Negative direction means at times financial leverage works in opposite direction also. Your EPS will drastically decrease. It is just both ways. It increases your EPS, it also decreases your EPS depending on the return that you are generating on your assets. So this is the meaning of degree of financial leverage. This completes our discussion on the concept called financial leverage. I have explained to you its meaning. I have also explained to you its calculations. I have also explained to you its pros and cons, up to what extent it is desirable, when it is not desirable, how far it is desirable, what are the practical implications, what is written in the book, and what happens in real life. All these I have explained to you with respect to financial leverage. If you have any question related to financial leverage on this slide, and these two slides, meaning I have explained, illustration I have given, its consequences I have given, and real life application and degree. Of all these 4 slides, let me know if you have not understood any part. Otherwise, I'll explain to you the next topic in unit number 4. No questions, shall I proceed? Okay, have you all mentioned your roll numbers in the chat box? Kindly mention your roll numbers in the chat box if you have not mentioned so far. Okay, assuming that you have no question to ask, I'll proceed and explain to you the next topic. That topic is hypothesis and valuation of a firm. Stands for 2 different names because both the names start with M. Therefore, this has become, or this is popularly known as hypothesis. One of the authors of this hypothesis is Modigliani, and the other author of this hypothesis, both of them have jointly written the paper, is Miller. Modigliani and Miller. So there were 2 authors who wrote a paper somewhere in 1965, and they came up with a hypothesis. It is related to the valuation of a firm and debt equity ratio or use of financial leverage. Before I explain to you this hypothesis, once again let us summarize. Last time, just now, 2 minutes before, what we agreed, higher is the DPS, higher will be EPS in ordinarily circumstances. Means debt equity ratio increases earning per share. This is what we concluded at 2-3 minutes before. Modi, Gilani and Miller have challenged this proposition. They say that capital structure or different permutations and combination of capital structure has no bearing on the valuation of a firm. Value of a firm or market price of a firm has got nothing to do with the capital structure. Something which is 100% opposite to what has been said just now. I'll repeat. Just now, what did we conclude? That if capital structure is different, EPS will be different. Look at this slide. What is different in these scenario? If you refer to these firms as firm A, B, C, D, instead of 2, 3, 4, 5, you call these firms as A. Let me just write here. Call these firms as A. B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Call these firms as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. What is different in these firms? In these firms, assets are same and total capital is same. Their return is same. They are earning 20%. Their capital is 1,000. Only difference in their capital structure. Because of capital structure, their EPS is drastically different. 7.9, 9.8, 12.5, 16, 23, 38, 83. So nothing is changed in these all firms A to H except debt equity ratio. 1:4, 3:7, 2:3, 1:1. Except debt equity ratio, nothing is changed in these firms because return remains the same. Why is it their EPS is different? Because of debt equity ratio. So Modi, Gilani and Miller have concluded, their hypothesis says just the opposite. They say just the opposite and they have proved it. So through the next 2-3 slides, I'll prove it. I'll explain to you why Modi, Gilani and Miller are right. Why is it that what we have learned in the previous slide is incorrect, is not true? Are you aware of the meaning of what valuation of a firm? Are you clear about the concept, meaning of what valuation of a firm?
Yes, sir.
Valuation of a firm means what is the market capitalization of this firm. Means, or further, all the shares held by the company multiplied by current market price will be equal to value of a firm. Value of a firm undergoes changes every day, twice, thrice, regularly. If the share prices increase, value increases. If share price decreases, value decrease. So valuation of a firm means market capitalization or shares, market price of shares of the company multiplied by number of shares. So Modi, Gilani and Miller say that valuation of a firm has got nothing to do with capital structure, which is 100% opposite to what we studied in slide number 22. How they have proved it? That is what will be our matter of discussion in the next 2-3 slides. If the brief argument of the brief meaning of MM hypothesis are clear, I will proceed. Shall I proceed? The meaning of this valuation are clear to you?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
also MM hypothesis, what do they argue? They argue that there is no relationship between capital structure and valuation of a company, which is 100% opposite to what we just saw in slide number 22. Now let me explain to you how they arrived at. Modi, Gilani and Miller have proved the above wrong. What they have proved wrong? Recall the concept of financial leverage. Higher the ratio, I have written wrong. Higher the ratio, higher EPS if ROA is greater than KT. Higher EPS means higher valuation of a firm, because when earning per share is high, only then people will buy. When more people buy, share price increase. Under this assumption, This is what we studied. But second point, Modigliani and Miller have proved that hypothesis as wrong. They maintain that there is no relationship between the capital structure and valuation of a company, which means debt equity ratio has no effect on EPS. It is 100% contrary to what we discussed in slide 22. Next, they have proved their hypothesis with an illustration that I'll show you in slide number 26. Their hypothesis is based on certain assumptions, which also we shall discuss later. But first I'll show you the illustration on the next page. How have they proved it? This is the illustration. Now look at the illustration through which they have proved that whatever was said was incorrect. Let me raise the font size so that it is easy to see. Okay. Suppose there are two types of firms. One is levered firm and one is unlevered firm. Which firm is called as levered firm? Which firm can we call as levered firm?
So with more
Has
debt,
the debt.
debt
With debt. Firm which has debt.
Debt.
Which will be unlevered firm?
It does not have debt.
The firm which has no debt. What is happening here? Okay, the firm which has no debt. No debt. The firm which has no debt. Correct. Now, let us. They have. I'm explaining to you the way Modigliani and Miller have explained their hypothesis. Let us assume that earning before interest and taxes for both the firms is $10,000 or rupees or pound, anything. 10,000 each. A levered firm has got debenture naturally with debt carrying 5% interest, rupees 30,000, and this firm has no debt. Each point I am explaining to you, the moment it is not clear, you seek an explanation. We have assumed there are two firms with debt, without debt. Their earning per share, their earning before interest and taxes is the same. So 10,000 each. One firm has debt naturally with lever, it will have debt. One firm has no debt. Now it is 5% debt. So how much interest will it pay? On 30,000, 5%, 1,500. How much interest will this company pay? Nil.
Zero.
Because there is no debt. Okay. Next, we assume that equity in this company is 8,500 and equity in this company is 10,000. Why are we assuming so? Because there are certain calculations which we will reach at the end. In order to make the back calculation, it has been assumed so. We further assume that cost of equity for company levered firm is 11% and for unlevered firm it is 10%. Why this has been assumed a different KE? Why is it that KE of levered firm is more than the KE of unlevered firm?
So because equity will increase.
Say it again.
Because equity will increase in the levered firm
Okay.
as debt.
Any other reason?
KE have more market share.
Okay. Any other reason?
Because more risk is there.
Yes, because more risk is there. Shareholders in a company which is levered carry certain amount of risk, because if everything goes wrong, every money that company has earned will be paid to the debenture holders and they will get nothing. Therefore, they carry risk. When they carry risk, they expect more. Similarly, in case of an unlevered firm, their expectation is less because they are not subject to any risk. Okay. Then what will happen to if this is the situation, what will be the market capitalization? Market capitalization is equal to equity divided by KE. What is equity? 8,500. If you just take out your calculator, if you divide 8,500 by 0.11, you get 77,272. Similarly, if you divide 10,000 by 0.1, you get 1 lakh. So market capitalization is equal to equity divided by KE. I have mentioned here also equity divided by KE. you can verify your answers later or maybe even now. To market capitalization we have calculated. Now market cap on debt will remain the same and total will be equal to the one that I have worked out. So as of now, apparently the market capitalization or total value of a firm, market capitalization or value of a firm, right, as on date is still higher for a levered firm. I'll explain to you the reasons later, or I'll explain the theory later. But apparently it seems that market capitalization of a levered firm is still higher. It is still supporting what we discussed in slide number 22. It is still proving Modi, Gilani and Miller as wrong. But as we progress, as we move on, we will be able to prove that their hypothesis was correct. But before I do that, let me know if all the calculations on this slide are clear to you. Look at the calculations once again. For each calculation, there is a logic which I have explained. I can do that once again. But if the calculations are clear, then only we will proceed.
Sir, calculations are clear. Sir, in the with debt column and equity is taken 8,500.
Sorry?
So equity is taken 8,500.
Equity is taking
8,500 in the levered firm.
Okay, equity is 8,500 in the levered firm and expectation is 11%. So market capital.
Sorry, how did that amount come here?
Okay. How is it that? See, if you have 10,000 EBIT and this figure of equity has been assumed purposely with the reason that two firms have to be different in their capital structure. One should have some quantum of debt and one should have no debt. One should have some debt, no debt at all, and one should have some debt. Only then we will be able to differentiate between the two firms. Another important reason is that we have made certain calculations in such a way that will be shown in the next slide, that both the valuation of firm at a later stage becomes the same and unlevered firm starts commanding more price than the levered firm. So because of back calculations, it has been assumed so. By the time you reach second and third slide, this portion will be clearer much more. Read this figure right for the time being. As of the current scenario, levered firm enjoys more market capitalization than unlevered firm.
Sir, do we have subtracted the interest amount from the earning before interest?
Interest amount has to be subtracted.
Okay, sir.
Because interest amount is to be subtracted, because whatever remains, you will calculate the KE only on equity. You will not calculate KE or anything on KD because these are not traded in the market. You get back the same amount. If you move on to the second slide, also keep the first slide in front of you or maybe somewhere. What Modi Gilani did, they have proved their point using some steps, and they call those steps as arbitrage process. They assumed a series of steps. What are those steps? Number one step, they assume a shareholder who holds 1% stock in a levered firm sells. How much will be 1% stock of? How much will be 1% stock of any levered firm? Its 1% will be 772. So he is selling for 772. As a next step, he borrows 300 rupees at 5% interest. So cash available with him becomes 1072. With this money, he purchases 1% stock of unlevered firm. How much will be 1% of unlevered firm? 1% will be 1000. He purchases that. Now, if he does so, he still has a balance of rupees 72 and 72 paise, on which he pays 30% taxes. Still, he will be left with 51 rupees more. What is happening in all these four steps? he holds 1% stock, that is same 1% here or 1% there, 1% in levered or 1% in levered. He is holding same, he is owner of the same percentage. In addition to that ownership, he has got 51%, 51 rupees more. In addition to that, his risk is reduced. Risk is reduced because now he is buying in an unlevered firm. So therefore risk is reduced. He is enjoying same return. When all these things are there, then he should be happy buying the shares of a firm which is unlevered. A little more explanation. What was his return before? Before his return was 85. How it was 85? 1% stock in a levered firm was so much, on which 11% is 85. His return now is also 85. Why? He is holding 1% stock in a unlevered firm. So his return is 100 rupees on 1%, on which, from which he is paying 5% interest. So he is left with 85. Same return as before. He is having same return, no risk because of unlevered firm. 51 rupees as, capital gain or maybe additional money. So it shows that it is better to invest in an unlevered firm. Like this, several people will do. As a result, share price of a levered firm will continue to fall. Share price of an unlevered firm will continue to rise. As a result, there will be a lot of losses and people will be better off using an unlevered firm, which will prove that capital structure has no bearing on the market capitalization or valuation of a company. It will take a bit longer time to understand. That will be possible if we read each point and seek a clarification on each point. I'll go back. This part is clear. Somebody asked me, why have we assumed it at 8,500? It was assumed 8,500 so that we are able to arrive at this 772 and this 772 rupees for same return before and after. Like when you wish to arrive at a certain conclusion, at times you do some back calculation. You start at the end and then go backward, and you reach at a point where you wanted to. For these reasons, this data has been assumed. So first of all, this data we should be clear about how do we say that market capitalization of a firm is different. Right now it is different, but with the arbitrage process, have tried to explain that this situation will not continue for long. Why it will not continue for long? They have assumed a hypothetical transaction. And what is that hypothetical transaction? That suppose there is a shareholder who holds 1% stock in a levered firm. What will be 1% stock in a levered firm? 1% stock in a levered firm will be its 1%, that is 772 and 72 paise. That is 1% of it. He borrows 300 from the market, so he will have 1072 rupees. From this, he purchases 1% stake in an unlevered firm, so he uses 1000 rupees. He will be left with 72 rupees. Even if he pays the taxes on it, his net earning will be 51 rupees. So in the given transaction, in a given which they call as arbitrage process, what is happening? The shareholder remains owner of the same percentage, 1% in unlevered or 1% in levered. In addition to this ownership, he has got 51 rupees more. Further, his risk is less. Much further, his return before and his return is the same. When there are several advantages, same return, no risk, more capital gain, then like him, other shareholders will also do. If several shareholders start selling in levered, buying in unlevered, so what will happen? Share price of levered will decrease and share price of unlevered will increase. When this happens, this figure will continue to fall, this figure will continue to rise. A time will come when this will be less than this. When levered firms market capitalization will become less than the market capitalization of unlevered firm. Then reverse may start. the market will continue to reach equilibrium. And when market continues to reach equilibrium, the value of both the firms will become same. Then at this point we can say that Modi Gilani have proved with the help of some calculations that there is no difference in levered and unlevered firm, meaning thereby there is no difference. I mean, capital structure has nothing to do with the valuation of a firm. Let me know if you require more discussion on any of these calculations made in these two slides. Yes, please. You all have written down your roll numbers?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Look at the slide and let me know if you require any clarification on the calculations part. Yes, please.
So, sir, hypothesis is the correct hypothesis.
See, once you have understood what is the situation, you may take a call okay, which one is correct, which one is not correct. Are they correct in their approach or they are wrong in their approach? You can take a call. You yourself can decide whether they are right or not. What is your opinion if you have understood the part? What is your opinion? Are they correct in their proposition? Is the hypothesis correct or wrong?
Sir, I think it is correct.
Any other logic or any other reason not agreeing or even agreeing with the hypothesis? Consider yourself as an investor. Consider yourself as an investor. Assume that previously you were holding 1% stock of a levered firm which has debt. Would you like to switch over like this or not? Would you like to switch over like the one I have mentioned in the steps, 4-5 steps? Would you like to do this or not? There has to be some answer for it. I will not. If you have understood.
Sir, I also think that once the equilibrium point is reached, that unlevered firm share value of unlevered firm becomes equal to that levered firm. Then after this point, the opposite will again start. Like
yes, you are right. Absolutely right. After this point, opposite may start. When opposite starts happening, people once again switch over from one to another.
Yes, sir.
As a result, market will always have equilibrium. When market has equilibrium, that means the valuation of both the company is same. When valuation of both the company is same, despite one levered, one unlevered, they have proved their hypothesis that capital structure has nothing to do with market capitalization or valuation of a firm. This is what they wanted to prove. If it starts happening with this way or that way, continue to switch from this to that, and in the process equilibrium is maintained. So this is what they wanted to prove.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you will learn more if you read these 2-3 slides 2-3 times and try to understand. Note down the question. I'll continue tomorrow and conclude. Tomorrow's session again at 4 o'clock perhaps may not be possible because the invigilation will end at 4:30. So I'll find another time slot for you tomorrow and will inform you. By the way, if we can decide right now, I'll anyway send you a notice. Tomorrow your classes are there in the morning part?
Yes, sir. It's from 8:50.
8:52?
Sir, 1:45.
1:45. 1:45. Now from 2 o'clock invigilation is starting, and so I'll try to see either to have class from 8 or if nothing works out, then I'll have to perhaps take it after the invigilation is over, because it starts at 2 o'clock, we'll finish at 5 or something. Anyway, I'll check with the department if I can be excused. If not, then we will do something and we'll try to conclude it tomorrow. Right now, you can leave the meeting.
Is 8:50 not available?
Sorry?
Sir, 8:50 time slot is not
At
available.
8:50, I'm not available. I can start it at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll notify it for 8 o'clock. I will send you a message also. Now we can quit the meeting.